really a pleasure to introduce Michelle. She's a really good friend of mine, and I've also worked alongside her. So Michelle has compliance experience coming from more than 5 years working for a community bank in central Indiana, as well as 4 years of law school in Guatemala. Her areas of expertise include BSA, bank security, lending, and consumer compliance. She is an accredited credit union compliance expert, as well as a credit union enterprise risk management expert. In addition, she recently was awarded the 2024 Global Scholarship from the World Credit Union Council Global Women's Leadership Network. And there are only 4, it's very prestigious, there are only 4 of these scholarships that are awarded around the world. Michelle was the only recipient this year in the United States. She's going to be presenting today on what makes credit unions unique, aka the credit union difference, and on I-10 mortgages, which is a mortgage product that would help to fill the gap in communities with a growing immigrant population. So again, it is my honor to introduce you to Michelle Carrera.
Yay. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. What Elise failed to mention is that we're not good friends, we're best friends. Very blessed to be here. I actually was a Muncie resident for at least 6 years, very familiar with the area, with the needs. Actually, I used to work for Mutual Bank that no longer exists, so that's a community bank that where I worked, at least was my boss. Great leader. I know we're not here to talk about her, but I would not be here if it wasn't for her, so I would say that. So yes, but then I changed, right? So I worked for community banks, and then I got a job at a place called the Indiana Credit Union League. I didn't know what credit unions were. I thought, you know, like most people, the only thing I knew was, well, credit unions typically have better rates at auto loans. That's as far as I went. I had no idea what it was about. Then I started learning, and I realized that the ethos of credit unions align with kind of how I am inside. Because whenever people talk about whatever you do for your work, yes, it's work, you get paid for it, but try to do something that aligns with your values. And then I realized that it really aligns with my values based on how it started. And I'm gonna give you a couple tidbits of information on how they started, but then what they do nowadays and the differences that they make in our communities. So let's see here. Okay, so the tidbit of information, credit unions, the first credit union in the United States, it started in 1909 in Massachusetts. It was a cooperative of a church. It was a Mary's cooperative. And that was just in general, nothing was legislated. Then there's a gentleman called Edward Filene. And he's also known, AKA, as the father of credit unions. He was a businessman that was very wealthy in Massachusetts area. And in 1921, he established the Massachusetts Credit Union Act. And what's interesting though, it's like credit unions have, you know, like federal regulations that they need to adhere to, but there's also, depending on how they're chartered, they could be state chartered credit unions. So we're gonna talk about a little bit about the difference, but that's how he started with the Massachusetts Credit Union Act, and he started advocating for that. So what's interesting now, in credit union industry, there's an institute called the Filene Institute. And the Filene Institute, based on, you know, from his legacy, it's a wonderful institution that works on innovation, works right now with advancing credit unions, but not only just because they're great as themselves, but also where they're gonna be in the future. So right now, of course, they're partnering with things of how to use AI for credit unions, how to have initiatives in marketing, worldwide outreach, so it's fantastic. So, of course, we know just in general, between 1921 and 1935, more states started enabling credit unions to exist, essentially. But the main thing is, besides we already know about the Depression of 1929, which I wanted to put it in there because credit unions come in to fill the gap, right? That's the idea. But it was legislated in 1934, FDR established the Federal Credit Union Act. And that's the main piece of legislation that allowed for credit unions to exist in the federal level. One thing that's interesting about credit unions is that, I don't know if you've noticed that, you know, for example, we have Ball State Financial in the room. We have Thrive is an exception here, but whenever you hear the name of a credit union, you sometimes will hear X and Y Credit Union, or sometimes you will hear X and Y Federal Credit Union. And what that means is that sometimes credit unions in Indiana could be federally chartered, means they're governed by the Federal Credit Union Act, by the federal laws, or they could be state chartered. So that means that they're ruled by the State Credit Union Act, so by Indiana code, essentially. So it depends. They're very similar in the way they're run, but it's kind of like a little bit tidbit of information of how credit unions are different. The main thing, though, is that one of the questions that you also get are credit unions as safe as banks? You know, we always hear, especially after the failure of a couple of banks a couple of years ago, people started panicking. You know, you always hear insured by FDIC. Well, credit unions are just as safe as banks. Credit unions are insured by the National Credit Union Administration, or NCUA. So actually, if you look at the rules, they're insured just the same as banks. The structure is just the same. So I did want to share that piece of information because I know there's sometimes questions. So credit unions are insured by NCUA, and sometimes some credit unions even have excess insurance. So what does that mean? It's like beyond whatever is federally insured, you also have your deposits insured up to probably $1 million or more. And please, my credit union people in the room, feel free to pitch in and help me when it comes to that. As of now, according to the latest data, we have 140 million members of credit unions and more in the United States. And one thing about credit unions too is in banks, people call the depositors customers, consumers, right? Credit unions are called members. And that's one thing of information that I learned day one from the league. Do not call credit union customers, they're members. What does that mean? Well, turns out that when you join a credit union, you're a part owner of the credit union. You have a voting right in how the credit unions run. So the credit union essentially is a non-for-profit financial cooperative that whenever it does well, and that's the whole point, you know, does well, all of the benefits go back to the membership because the membership has a democratic vote in how it's ran. Even not only that, but it's also ran by the board of directors are voted in by the membership as well. So that means that, you know, it's for the members, it's by members for the members, and it's to give back. So that's one thing that's interesting. That funny cartoon that you see there looks weird, right? But it's a standard credit union cartoon it's a standard credit union symbol since credit union first started. It's called the little man under the umbrella. And it, you know, was established in 1924. What that's supposed to represent for credit unions is that credit union members are not the big people. You know, it doesn't matter if you have $10 billion or $5 in your account. What that means is that it's made for the common man. And that umbrella means that the credit union will protect you from whatever happens, whatever is rained on you, whatever happens. So that's the idea. Is the little man under the umbrella. That's what it is. So it's kind of, most credit union people already know what it's about, but I just kind of wanted to explain to you the history of that cartoon. So now we're gonna go back to where I work. I work for the Indiana Credit Union League. What that is that essentially 99% of the credit unions in the state of Indiana are part of this trade association. And this trade association, actually, we have one of our board members here, which is Brett from Thrive Credit Union. It's an association where we were established in 1935, and what we care about is essentially protecting the interests and of our member credit unions, and of course our members, and also make sure they thrive. And what I like about credit union world too is not only why they were established is to help the common man, is that everybody helps each other. It's about cooperating with each other. So, you know, I would have, you know, in my role, I travel throughout the state. I help a lot of credit unions with whatever they need. And sometimes, honestly, I don't have a clue how to help them. But I know that I can contact a couple people. I can say, hey, Brittany, do you have a policy that you can share? And I even say, it's for this credit union. And they're like, no problem. So they are not competition with each other. They know that the spirit of the credit union, that ethos, the way they exist, is to help each other. And that's what I love about working with credit unions. But that's the league here. And just kind of explain a little bit about the scholarship that I was able to get this year. I'm really blessed to have it, is that the way that credit unions work with each other regarding trade associations is that all of Indiana credit unions is part of the league, the Indiana Credit Union League. Then the league, there's different leagues throughout the states, and we're part now of America's Credit Union. So that's kind of like the credit union system trade association in the whole United States. There's going to be our annual conference is going to start on Sunday. So we're going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. with them. But not only that, there's actually the World Credit Union Council that goes beyond, right, the United States. So there's financial cooperatives in Guatemala, where I'm from. And there's a big one. There's a big credit unions in, of course, the Canadian credit union system, Brazil, Puerto Rico. Now with the war, and the idea is helping each other, right? Helping each other thrive, and also the communities they serve, the countries they serve. So for example, with the war in Ukraine, I know there was a big push to help the credit unions there and make sure that they took care of the people that were suffering. So once again, goes back to the why, right? The ethos, the why, the what for, why I love working with credit unions. I'm not gonna read this, but it just kind of show you in metrics what kind of credit unions give back to the communities and the members they serve. And I do want to say, I'm not here to bash banks. I think that I'm a free market advocate. I think there's space for banks and credit unions in this world. But sometimes this space where credit unions go in, they fill the gap where banks maybe strategically, because they have to go back to their shareholders in their strategic plan, they might have to worry about the big commercial loans that they have to fill in. Well, what happens is that credit unions, there's space for everybody to work together. So I do believe that. So wrapping up credit unions. And I didn't say this at the beginning, but if you have any questions, if I'm using acronyms, just feel free to interrupt me. This is just an educational thing. But yes, social purpose, one thing about credit union difference is that credit unions exist to help people. That truly is what they exist. So whenever I go to credit unions, it doesn't mean, the biggest credit union in Indiana is Everwise Credit Union, used to be TCU, I'm sure you've heard of them, to the smallest one. Always when you go there and you hear what they want to do or what their plans are, okay, we're doing this to help our members. That's why we exist, and that's what we do every day, to help our members. What that means is that every member counts, right? Once again, it doesn't matter how much the member has in deposit, how can I help my members? And that's, when you do a presentation, there's always things about storytelling. I do want to share one story that almost brought tears to my eyes of credit unions working together. There was a little credit union in Columbus, Indiana, very small credit union, has a member, 90 years old. He went to a dealership to get a car loan. And, like most of us that are responsible, we go get our financing before, but he didn't. He just said, hey, run my credit, whatever I qualify. So he qualified for a loan with the biggest credit union in Indiana, Everwise Credit Union. So he got his car loan. But then he was like, okay, I want a bank. I want to make my payments. I like to go in person. I want to go to this little credit union that I've been, being a member for 50 plus years and just refinance the loan. So what he did is he went to his little credit union, got a check for around $30,000 to pay off that big loan, Everwise, and then just kind of keep the servicing rights and pay off the loan through his little credit union. Well, it turns out that he lost the check. And I don't know if you know, yeah, I love it. I don't know if you know a lot, but when you see a cashier's check, you see a legend there that says valid for 90 days. So what that means is that even though you lost the check, and you can go to your credit union and say, hey, I lost the check, that claim cannot be enforced until the 90 days have elapsed. So in those 90 days, this person had to pay the little credit union because he got the loan and the big credit union, right? So he was 90 years old on their limited income. So it was a hassle. The little credit union called me and I said, you know what, let me see what we can do. I was able to get somebody in the lending department at the big credit union, and I know that in the end, they work with each other, but I got an email like at 8 p.m. that night, and they said, we made it great for the member, it's okay, we got taken care of. And, I'm not saying that doesn't happen in other institutions, but when can you hear that somebody truly cares about leaving everything behind, especially, working together to help somebody? So I love that, it's a good story. But once again, credit unions are non-for-profit. Their focus is to serve members. They're member-owned. I already explained that. You have that information in there. And what I love is that it's member-directed. So once again, it's all kind of like a virtuous cycle, I would call it, of starting from the deposits to giving back in the way of dividends, as I said, better rates, and that's why, credit unions have better rates, or programs or innovative things, right? And truly, as I said, when you look at the way that credit unions they put their money where their mouth is, as you see all of the initiatives that they do in their communities. And you can see that here in the state of Indiana, but you can see that all over the United States. So and credit unions, I wanted to share, just to make sure I give a shout out to the credit unions in Delaware County. I included all the ones in Delaware County. I know we're in Muncie, but of course we have Thrive Credit Union here in the room. We have Thrive, Prime Trust, I'm sure you've seen them, right? We have First County Credit Union in the south side. They're next to the Rosebud Coffee House. Very nice credit union. We have Three Rivers now. They're headquartered in Fort Wayne. Indiana Members Credit Union has a little branch inside the hospital. And of course, we have Ball State Financial here. That's in the room as well. So, chirp, chirp. Okay, so that's kind of a wrap up of what credit unions are. I don't know if the credit unions in the room want to chip in and share something about what you're working on, or how to get a hold of you. I want to give you that opportunity. Do you want to share something?
Sure. Yeah. We're looking into doing I-10 mortgages. That's
Okay.
here today. So that's one of the things we're working for the future. But I'm a financial literacy and community engagement manager, so we go out in the community and teach financial literacy to help you with your financial wellness. So if you've got an organization, a group, you need a speaker, you want a presentation on how to do budgets, doing your credit and things like that. That's what my role is at the credit union. So I'm willing to come out to the organizations and have these conversations with you and sit down. You can come to the credit union. We're a community charter that you can come in, anybody can come in, Ball State Financial. We'll sit down and talk to you one-on-one. We'll be doing those things like that, anything like that, and you're all welcome to go to the credit union.
Don't want to put you on the spot if you don't want to share, but.
So we have 3 locations in Muncie, so we serve various areas with brick and mortar locations. So we have one that is located on Morrison Road on the northwest side. We have one closest to downtown, is on Wheeling Avenue across from Pizza Hut, wherever that is. And then we have a location that is in the old industrial park, which is right behind, think of, we're kind of impact right behind Tech. So we sit back there as well. So we do have 3 full service locations. We're a community charter, just like Ball State Financial, which I think is really unique with credit unions now, is that we can serve everybody that's living within a certain community. So we serve residents of Delaware, Madison, and Henry County now at Thrive. One of our biggest missions is helping impact the community. So I hope some of you, if not all of you, have seen us out in the community, helping out as much as we can.
Thank you.
Financial literacy is a big topic right now, too, as Chris said. So I think any credit you can talk to, you can probably find somebody that wants to help out within your organization. We were just interested in doing financial literacy this week, and we try to do that as much as we can within school systems and also organizations. As Brett mentioned, we're a CDFI, so we're a community development financial institution, which means that we're helping serve parts of our community and that maybe not every financial institution is going after. So those that are around the poverty level, a little bit above or below, one of our main focuses is to help those people that are underbanked or unbanked and bring them into a financial institution that maybe they wouldn't be otherwise offered products at another credit union or bank. So that kind of sets us apart. It's a little bit different. We continue to do more and more with our CDFI and offer more and more products and services, serving those with modest needs in the community. So we'd love to have you, and you can reach us on our website and through social media.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you. Yes. That's one of the things that I forgot to mention, but it's true. When it comes to the unbanked population or the underbanked population, is that if they don't qualify to get traditional financial services from other institutions, they're prey to payday lenders. They are preyed upon with more fees. So it's people that are truly struggling. I'm not even saying living paycheck to paycheck, but truly struggling, right? And then they're fall victim into, those check cashing places that have horrible fees. And that's one thing also too that I love about credit unions is that I've seen, as I said, they live the ethos. I mean, it doesn't matter how much money. Yeah, Nate?
Just the folks that are underbanked, what kinds of things are they needing a loan for? Are they asking for money from you all?
A lot of times it's not even lending, it's just an account.
Okay.
To where they don't trust financial institutions, they've never been in a financial institution. That's where we're working with the Boys and Girls Club. So they have open door that goes in there, and that we're learning more and more that you have to be there, you have to be consistent, you have to be
card, like that H&R Block, right, they've been burned somewhere along the way, so they don't have a trust for financial institutions. So it's one of those things like, it's like, well, I don't want to put my money there because I burn and you get all them fees or there's something like that. And that's what we make that difference, that we're going to sit down and talk to you about, to educate you how to do that. Get you off of those cards to make you understand that, you know, you don't have to, every time you use it to buy your groceries or something, you're getting charged $1 to $3 fee every time you get your money off of that card. That you can come in, we'll set up and we'll get an account for you, which your debit card will teach you how to do that, how to work the fee system, how not to overdraft your account. And those but it takes time to build that trust. You really have to be there, like I said, the consistency that it takes time to build a relationship, and it's not that first time, it's that 2 or 3 times that you have to show up every time to be there, and then they start to open up and talk about the story, and then all of a sudden, you know, you can help them change their lives, and that's what credit unions do.
Question.
Yes?
So is that the primary means then of risk management for future loans through education and relationship with the customers who would be high-risk loans in the future?
That makes a huge difference. We have a lot of members who've been with us a long time that don't have great credit, but we have a relationship with them, they're in, we know them, and we give them loans. They get denied everywhere else, but then they come to us. I mean, we have people that will have a car dealership call us and say, "You're giving this guy a loan?" And we're like, "Yeah, okay." You know, and so it's a relationship. It works both ways. And you know, and that's what we talk about when we get people where we can't actually help them. We talk about how to build that relationship with us, starting with an account or a small loan to help build credit, build the relationship, and try and work them into a full-fledged member. So it's a lot about relationships. It's a lot about just giving that time to them instead of saying, "No, this loan isn't going to make us money," or "This account isn't going to make us money," which a lot of banks, do. We would look at that. You know, we have people that we've given a $300 loan to for a lady to buy eyeglasses, and she just couldn't afford it. She's on Social Security, but not many places are going to look at it, a $300 loan, because I mean, we charge the max we can charge is 18%, and her of that loan, I remember that loan because we made $1.95. Even if, because she paid it off in 3 months. So it's those kind of things that you can help people with.
I think that's part of like why credit unions are who they are, because you think about that lady that needs eyeglasses, right? And her other alternative would be to go to like check cash and banks or whatever they're called now. And at the end of the day, she's going to be charged 300% in a revolving credit, because essentially they set it up to where you never pay those off. And so it's a nice thing where people don't really understand where credit unions can step in and say, "Hey, we offer these small payday loans where we even do a loan for $100. We're not making any money, but we're building that relationship with our members and setting them up for success where most financial institutions are."
Great. I'm glad I invited you guys. I should have just invited you to give the talk. But yes, no. And I do want to finish with, when we talk about CDFI, the credit union had to go to a really rigorous process to qualify as a CDFI. That means that they qualify for certain grant money, but that entails a lot of an audit process after the fact. So it's not just, hey, some grant money, do whatever you want with it. The programs have to be really well thought out, and there has to be an ROI to the communities they serve. So I do wanted to add that. So now we're talking about filling the gap, changing a little bit. So I wanted to share, kind of have my presentation and explain a little bit of a program that's called ITIN mortgages. And it could be any type of ITIN lending, but we're gonna talk about mortgages because, Muncie Land Bank, Pat Stone, we know that home ownership traditionally, and we hope it continues to be that way, is the path to building wealth in this country. So first of all, what's an ITIN? An ITIN is a tax number assigned by the IRS to individuals that typically do not qualify for a Social Security number in the United States, but they live here, they just live here, and they pay taxes. So the IRS, this has nothing to do with, the IRS doesn't care whether here somebody's illegally. I mean, that all they care about is that you pay your taxes. That's Other organizations care about the other part. But that part, so then they issue ITIN numbers. So, it's for people that typically live here and they're not allowed to get a Social Security number. It starts typically with a 9, that's just something that's interesting, and it's formatted like a Social Security number. It is estimated that in the United States, there's 29.5 million individuals that have an ITIN number. And what that means is that those individuals have needs like we all do. And they need car loans, they want to get mortgages, they want to have, some of them even, they have small businesses like, I don't know her name, the person that came in and brought our delicious food today. Patrona. Yeah, Patrona, yeah. So, there's a need, right? That's what I'm saying. There's a market need, there's a gap typically in the market. And, the thing is, I'm Hispanic, so I can share that. I'm sure maybe you can share with the other refugee communities here. When it comes to taking the leap and making programs happen for communities in need, not only there's a satisfaction, there's definitely an ROI. There's case studies that there's an ROI for the institutions that do it, but also the Hispanic community is so in tune with recommendations. They're not trusting, but if my neighbor, if my friend or whoever recommends an institution, trust me, everybody's going to be faithful. And there's been, as I said, people get scared at the beginning and they're like, are people going to pay their loans? Trust me, they do. They're not a flight risk. They're here and they contribute to the communities they live in. So as I said, it's a number that's assigned for individuals that don't qualify, but, they want to get a mortgage. There's that market opportunity. So it's just filling the gap in the communities, as I said, building partnerships in the community, and just kind of interesting here. So if you can see, just maybe this statistics might change depending on the type of immigration that we get, but the majority of ITINs are issued to, of course, Mexican people of Mexican descent, and then we have some people from Guatemala, that's where I'm from, and other places in Central America as well. So this is a general requirement. Every credit union, bank, mortgage lender that wants to implement an ITIN mortgage lending program would have their own risk management practices because there's a risk, like anything else, but there's a risk with anybody, really, right? But there's a risk. So typically, they will require the borrowers to bring an ITIN card or a letter from the IRS, assigning the ITIN number. They typically have very specific minimum down payment requirements just because of the risk. And I don't know if you know a lot about the mortgage programs, but most mortgages are sold in the secondary market, right? I'm not talking about ITIN lending, but most mortgages, if you go get your loan at whoever, you might go to your local credit union or your bank, but in the end you get a letter and say, hey, surprise, like 10 days later, your loan was sold to Sallie Mae or your loan was sold to whoever. We're gonna keep the servicing rights, meaning you're gonna keep paying us every month, but in the end, we don't own it. But when institutions don't sell it, because it's unsellable, because it's profitable to sell those loans, what they do is they portfolio, meaning they keep it in-house. So a 19 loan, an ITIN mortgage will be kept portfolio within the institution that does it. Just one thing to remember. So that's why, because they keep it in portfolio, the risk is a little bit different as well for the institutions that want to do it. So that's why there's typically very strict down payment requirements. But every institution is different, as I said. Everybody's free to do whatever they want. This is just a sample one that I took. This is the minimum credit score requirements. And of course, with an ITIN number, people build credit. And that's why they get it, right? That's why they get an ITIN, so they can build credit and have a credit score and don't be credit invisible. And of course, like most mortgages, they would want whoever is the borrower to have a 2-year employment history. So very similar to a regular mortgage product, except with a little bit more different requirements regarding the risk. Institutions that do it, I would say there's plenty of evidence out there. And when I talked about Filene, do you remember at the beginning when I talked about the Filene, the Federal Credit Unions and the Filene Institute? They published a paper with Inclusive, which is a CDFI organization that works with communities in need, about ITIN lending and ITIN mortgages. And there's case studies in there of the ROI, the institutions that have done the program, well thought out, of course, with measurements and policies and procedures of how well they have done implementing ITIN mortgage programs as well. But like anything, there should be a risk analysis and determine, what type of risk you want to take. Make sure that, you're complying with any regulatory requirements as well. And one thing too as well, when it comes to ITIN people that don't qualify for Social Security numbers, I do want to share, because I'm in compliance, that there's no regulations that state that institutions cannot bank people that are here legally or illegally. That's not in the regulation. That's nothing that, so for our institutions, that's not our problem. What does the regulation say? Well, when somebody comes in and opens an account, you need to get a legal name, physical address, tax ID number, so that will be the IT number, date of birth, and then whatever other type of documentation you want to get. So as long as you have your procedures, I've never seen in my history of working in compliance, almost 10 years, anybody getting in trouble for having specific programs where they might allow for a matricular card, for example. What is a matricular card? A consular card. So somebody, for example, that typically has an IT number, especially in the state of Indiana, is very, nobody that's here very rarely, but somebody that has an IT number, doesn't qualify for social security number, cannot go to the VMB and get a driver's license or a state ID. You can't. So what they do is, for example, I'm gonna say because I'm from Guatemala, if I have an IT number, I'm gonna go to the Guatemalan consulate in Chicago. And I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna say, please give me, I need an ID with my picture, right? That's the thing, with my address, so I would get a consular card. That's what a matricular card is. So typically people that have IT numbers have also matricular cards as well, which I know you work with. That credit union works a lot with the Mexican consulate as well. Financial center, but it's about state financial here, so it's like a little bit different. But so I just want to kind of end it. Yes, that's in general. I'm not going to bore you with compliance stuff, but that's what an IT mortgage is. And some credit unions have it. Some mortgage brokers have it. It's a great opportunity to fill the gap, especially, for example, in Muncie. Now we have a thriving refugee community. We have CAMPAC now. I know Thrive Credit Unions work with CAMPAC, with giving them auto loans. But Muncie's changing. And there's going to be a need. So might as well do the risk analysis and try to fill the gap in our communities. So that's about IT mortgages. But how about IT lending programs? As I said, that population needs a car loan. They might need a small business loan, a personal loan. They need to build credit. So some institutions have specific IT lending programs. And as I said, if anyone wants a reference of other credit unions, for example, throughout the United States that have implemented these programs and have seen an ROI, please let me know. I'll be more than happy. I'm very passionate about this. I do think it's something that will come here and fill the gap. And in the end, if somebody comes in and they have an IT number and in the end they're able to get a social security number, all you do is refinance and maybe sell it in the secondary market, but that's just later on. But as I said, no flight risk there and a great opportunity to fill in the market. And yeah, that's kind of it for my presentation. I hope some people that enjoy the tacos, you can go enjoy your tacos. I know it looks really good. And I just wanted to end it with that quote from Edward Filene, and goes back in the end to how credit unions are run, their ethos, and personally what I like to do as well every day in my work. So thank you. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and whoever wants to connect with me, add me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so yeah.
So yeah, normally we'll open up for question and answers or dialogue. I have some thoughts, but I'd love to let other folks jump in first.
So Michelle is one of our Lancaster board members, and I know that she will help us carry this message, but one of the services that we offer that I think goes very well with the IT and mortgages, we're a HUD housing counseling agency, and we have a bilingual certified housing counselor. So if the credit unions are working with this, and somebody with a mortgage that's getting a mortgage, get them a home buyer ed class. It's free. Nothing's free, but it will not cost them anything. And we're local. We have offices in Muncie and Anderson. So.
Thank you. That was clear then. Everything was understood. Nate?
I have like a whole monologue in my head. One thing is that I think the reality about Muncie, my wife, she's from Colombia. I didn't say this before. I spent 7 years in Guatemala working in the far western mountains. Very different from Guatemala City.
That's
right
right.
along the Mexican border, where folks, they're farmers, and they have about a half an acre, a quarter of an acre of land on the side of a mountain to try to produce food, send their kids to school, live life. And so a lot of those folks, to survive, they'll go into Mexico and cut coffee for 3 or 4 months. Or as over time, that route has been kind of forged, and there's a lot of people that come all the way north. So you'll have families that will send 1 or 2 people to come and work, and that's how they survive. Now that's a whole political issue in Guatemala. That's another tangent. But there's some real structural injustices that create a system where people who produce food don't have enough land to produce it. And so, but the reality is that the people that are coming, a lot of them are coming because that's how they're thinking about their family, they're thinking about the next generation, they're thinking about their kids. They come, they work really hard, they're responsible people. Not so much what we heard from, if anyone was watching CNN yesterday when two former president and the current president went there, did a big photo op at the border. Not so much what you're hearing from, especially one side. And the reality is that those people that population is growing here in Muncie. My wife, as I mentioned, she works with the migrant population here. She works at the Ross Center, and she's meeting families every day. And some of those families are folks without documentation that are coming to work. Other of those people are engineers that are working at Canpack and working at factories that are in Hagerstown. It's a reality in Muncie. And I would say too, it's one of the, when you think about economic development, there's a lot of myths that need to be dispelled because there is incredible evidence, and Michelle cited some of it, of migrant populations coming to cities that have gone through economic depression like Muncie because factories have left. And it's a whole strategy to revitalize the city. You invite the Bowling Green, which is similar, very similar to size, it's a college town in Kentucky. They've had this intentional strategy of inviting people from all over the world to bring their culture, bring their creativity, and bring their work ethic. And that Bowling Green is like, it's the vanguard of mid-sized cities in the Midwest. And I love the idea of Muncie becoming a place that opens its arms to folks like that. Not just because we want to be good neighbors, but also because it's good for Muncie. I mean, I think about, you know, the property that goes tax delinquent in Muncie. It goes delinquent, and then we have a tax sale, and we sell those properties. It's property that's already nearing maybe its end of its economic life. We sell it to folks from who knows where, and the first thing they do is they cut it up and they turn it into rentals. And then they do that for a while, and then as long as it's economically viable, they continue. When it's not viable anymore, it goes back to the tax sale, they linger, they deteriorate. And then we're at a place right now where the people at tax sale, a lot of them, not everybody who does tax sales creating problems, but the reality is that our housing stock is to a place where the only economically viable thing to do is to buy it and not invest in it, but just try to extract the last bit of life out of it. And so you're renting to people in very vulnerable situations. Just try to get it out before it's no good anymore. It's like a banana that I've used that analogy before, but it's rotten, it's brown, there's nothing to do with it, you just kind of throw it away. Gosh, if we could get into that process and get homes. I mean, I was thinking about HEART program in Paston. We create a program for migrants, invite folks to come here, families that are going to live in these houses, be so grateful, rehab them themselves, and they're going to be homeowners, not just renters that are trying to, make money off them, but people that are actually going to become a vested part of the community. I'm kind of dreaming a little bit, but as well as being a space where we talk about housing development and property development, this is also a space to talk about Muncie reality, and I think that's one that we're missing. There are people here that are starting to think about this differently, and so I'm really excited that you came, Michelle, and had the courage to talk about these things, and sometimes where they're not well received off the cuff, but yeah, so that's my monologue, excuse me.
No, my pleasure, my pleasure. And I do appreciate very diverse crowd. You know, I'm used to speaking with credit union people. I love my credit union people. Don't get me wrong, they're great people, but I do love to get that message out too. Because one of the things too that I realized when I started working with credit unions, I'm like, oh my goodness, they're so great. And I feel like credit unions outside of, you know, our own group, it feels like it's our best kept secret. A lot of people don't realize, you know, they're like, oh, I'm just gonna go get a bank, and they say bank and credit union. Once again, my best friend is a chief compliance officer at a bank, so I don't want to bash banks. But there's a place for everybody in the market, you know, that's what I mean. Yeah. Any questions or input or things that are happening in Muncie that you want to share? And credit unions, and one of the things that, you know, what I do mostly is regulatory compliance. And I can tell you that credit unions are just as regulated as banks. They're federally insured by NCOA. NCOA has board meetings every month. Their funds get audited. The share insurance fund, which is essentially shares, is when you go to credit union, put a deposit. So instead of calling it a checking account, it's a share account, but it's the same. Think about it the same. All of that is audited to the penny. So it's just as safe. I, for example, have not seen, you know, even, you know, of course the risk is different, the risk tolerance is different, and we've seen some banks failing, but you don't see as many credit unions failing, just because also too, they don't take as much risks, because what they do is just to help back their communities. I would say that in the end, it's a free market, they can choose wherever they want to go, but credit unions are just as safe as banks in that sense. And credit unions, as I said, are a wonderful place if you want to develop that relationship and not just be a number, but truly be a member with voting rights in the future, right? So if there's, for example, programs in the future that you don't want to, you know, you don't want that credit union to be run that way. You don't want that credit union to open a branch or close a branch. Or, that's one thing I didn't talk about at the beginning, is that because of the way it's ran and the margins that financial institutions are facing, you know, it's not an easy time. Last year and this year is not going to be easy. But one thing that's interesting is that credit unions are opening branches now. And we not only see it here, but we see it in the small communities. A lot of the banks that have closed branches because it's very hard to keep up, and, you know, it's not very profitable to, you know, some of those communities, they become what's called banking deserts. Credit unions go and buy that bank branch, and they open a branch there. So that's another difference too as well. I would say that that's a misconception, and I'm hoping that I'm kind of like, with this presentation and with maybe more awareness, I'm able to share with people that credit unions are a very, very safe place to bank. I have all my deposits and, you know, with a credit union, and that's what I do. I see the regulatory requirements on them, and it's very, very hard, especially the state charter, I mean, both of them, but state charter ones with the state and the federally chartered ones, and they can share with us the examination process, but it's not easy. Yeah. Anybody? Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Yvette L. Young of Eli's Way. And one thing that I would like to say as a business consultant who has evolved my business from a banking background is that knowledge is power. I really appreciate the information that you gave today.
Thank you.
There are a lot of people that have no clue as to what the differences are between the banking institutions and the credit union industry, and what more they have to offer. I also would like to say to you, young man, there are a lot of people that are going to not be on board with you, but as a business consultant and life coach, I would like to say that I believe in options, because everybody is not in the same place. And some of those things that, you know, others may be able to tap into, there are some that may not be able to use those very same resources. So it's very important may be very different from the situation on the other side, down the other side of the table. So, I think we need to be realistic in not judging options.
I just been judged. You just said that I can't, I invited it once.
No, I didn't say that. No, didn't say that. I'm not put words in there. I'm really just giving you insight on what we have dealt with because you're the newcomer. And I just wanted you to also know that there may be some resistance. I just need you to know what you're coming up against. Okay, publicly. Because that's mine.
So hopefully I want y'all to know that I'm a solid individual, and like I said, so I'm not here to take anything, but to add value with it.
All right.
Any other thoughts, questions for Michelle?
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Two things before, if you didn't get food, please, I think there's still some left.
You get some tacos.
And yeah, actually, you're welcome to take some with you if you want.
I already ate.
One, I just wanted, my closing
But I'm not
comment,
sure. I'm not sure.
I kind of went into the political realm, and I just want to say that whether there's an issue with migration and things happening on the border, and needing to be more secure, needing a process that there's more law and order, those kinds of things, that may be the case, and I think the country's coming to consensus on that. However, what Michelle said is there are 29.5 million people in the country right now that there may be some bad apples in there, and there may be some community costs that surface sometimes. But I would say, if you look at the evidence from an economic standpoint, you will find that there is a huge resource to be tapped into. And I think that resource, connecting it with infrastructure, home ownership, I think there's a huge opportunity. That's all I'm saying, that I would love to explore further how Muncie can take advantage of I-10 mortgages, and the people that we're meeting more and more, be able to refer them to somebody and maybe connect it with what we do with the land bank, or what Annette does at Pastone, or what Jenna does at 812 Coalition, or even some of y'all that are local developers. A local developer here, I won't name him, but I have a friend of mine who's a Ball State student. She lived with us for the last year, has been paying rent with us to our landlord, and she needed a new place because she needed more space, and she couldn't get somebody to rent her a place because she didn't have the 2 years of work history. And she also, there's some complications with her visa because she's a student. But anyways, a friend of mine said, "Hey, Nate, I trust you, send her over." And she's renting, and I'm sure she's going to be a great tenant for the next however long she's renting there. Just an anecdote, how it's something that's real, it's happening, and it can be something that we embrace and take advantage of as a community. Lastly, I think I've made the announcement a couple times. Next First Friday meeting, instead of meeting here, we've been organizing with the Greater Muncie Chamber of Commerce, the Muncie Delaware County Economic Development Alliance, and the Ball State Office of Community Engagement, what we're calling a housing summit. This is a QR code that you can swing by and get it on your phone. It's going to be at Ivy Tech. I think it starts at 9 o'clock. We're going to have keynote speakers that are talking about the Muncie reality. We're going to have breakout sessions that talk about solutions from the perspective of big for-profit development that's happening in other places in the state. We'll be talking to CDCs that have done things like leverage land banking and CDFIs. And then, whole day, keynote speakers and breakout sessions. It's free. The only thing is that you have to be there. We don't want people just dropping in for lunch. So register, be there the whole day.
Darn.
But
Just lunch, I don't here for
8:30,
the
so
full
be there
free
8:30.
food. Hop in for lunch.